Hello students, during this presentation we are going to be working on some sample problems for optimizing restaurant revenue. Let's go ahead and get started. So here in question 1 it says, using the food cost percentage method, determine the suggested menu item pricing given the information below. So here we're doing this for chicken Milanese, and we've got the food cost here and the desired food cost percent. And so to calculate the suggested menu item price, we just take the standard cost and divide it by the desired food cost percent. Okay, and we're just going to do the same thing with tiramisu. So we take the $1.56 and divide it by the desired food cost percent of 26%. And then last here, halibut Oscar, we'll take the food cost, the standard food cost amount, $12.98, and divide it by the desired food cost percent of 35%. Okay. Question 2, it reads, using the contribution margin method, determine suggested menu item pricing given the following information. So here, instead of dividing it by the desired food cost percent, we're just adding the desired contribution margin. So for the black and blue salad, this is an entree salad, we would just take the standard cost of $4.65 and add the desired contribution margin of $12. And we're going to do the same thing with peach cobbler. So $1.78 for the standard cost plus $5 for the desired contribution margin. And then last off here we have veal parmesan. And we're just taking the food cost, standard food cost amount of $7.80 and adding the desired contribution margin of $15. All right, question 3, using the contribution margin and desired food cost percent methods, determine the suggested menu item pricing for the menu below. So here we've got our desired contribution margin for each category of menu items and a standard 30% food cost here in column C. And we're just going to apply the two different methods. So first off, we have the contribution margin approach. So for sweet summer corn chowder, we're going to take the $4.92 and add the desired contribution margin of $14. Now we can go ahead and throw a dollar sign in front of the 44 in B44 here, and that will allow us to then copy this down through the appetizer section. Okay, let's go ahead and do the same thing for desired food cost percent. So we take the standard cost and divide it by the 30% desired food cost percentage. Okay, let's go ahead and throw a dollar sign in front of the 44 in C44 reference. And since these are all 30%, let's just go ahead and copy that all the way down to the bottom. All right, let me show you a little shortcut here in order to populate in all these desired contribution margins. So if here under caviar we go equals VLOOKUP, and we search for this category caviar among the results in A44 through B51, and throw dollar signs in front of those references. And then for index, we want to return the second column's results. So if you look within this selected area, we want it to return the second column's results. So we're going to put in a 2 here. And then is sorted, we're going to put 0, which means that it needs to find a precise value. Okay, so that pulled up the $160. Now that amount will just need to be added to the standard cost. So here at the end, we're just going to add the $118.07. Now we can just copy that on down. Okay. And now it's populated in each of the desired standard cost contribution margins for each category and added it to the standard costs. We have all the pricing here. Okay, question 4. Kiara operates a successful catering company. She offers a variety of service styles, including plated events. For events with over 50 attendees, Kiara offers guests 2 menu selections. For events with over 100 attendees, Kiara offers guests 3 menu selections. Guests must RSVP their entree selection in advance. Below is data from the past year for Kiara's plated events. Using this data, complete a menu analysis worksheet on Kiara's plated events menu. Okay, so the first step we're going to take here is to calculate total sales. And total sales is just unit sales, or numbers sold here, times the sales price. Okay, that's great. We'll go ahead and pull that down through the last menu item, which is tofu parmesan. Next is the total cost. So same kind of thing, except this time we're going to use the item cost. So we take the number sold and multiply it by the item cost. And we'll drag that down through tofu parmesan once again. Now we're ready to calculate the item contribution margin. And this is just the selling price minus the item cost. And the total contribution margin then is just that unit contribution margin times the number sold. You could have also calculated this by taking total sales minus total costs. Let's go ahead and pull both of those down. Okay, now we're ready to calculate the food cost percent. That will be our item cost divided by our selling price. Let's copy that down. Okay, wonderful. Now we're going to do some classifications. We're going to classify items based on their popularity, their contribution margin classification, and their food cost classification. In order to classify them, though, we need to know what are the averages for popularity, contribution margin, and food cost. So we're going to have to complete these bottom sections here. So under total, we're just using the sum function. Okay, we can do the same thing in all these. And we could actually copy this on over. So there we have all of our totals. Now let's do our average. So if it's just an average, not a weighted average, we can use the average function. So equals average. And it looks like it's already figuring out what we want to do. Let's go ahead and type it in. Okay, and let's copy that over here as well, these other 3 cells. Last thing we have to do is the weighted average. And the weighted average is calculated by using the totals that are available to us. So here we have our selling price. We're trying to find the weighted average selling price. And if you get confused on how to solve for this, just think about what totals are using the selling price in its calculation. So if you recall, we used the total sales, or we used the selling price in the total sales calculation. Okay, so we're going to take the total sales for all items, so that's $404,224. We're going to divide it by the total unit sales, which is 10,538 units. Okay, and that will give us a weighted average selling price. Okay, that weighted average takes into account the varying number of units sold. If instead we just used a simple average like we did up in row 117, this would give us a different value. It might be close, but it will be different. It won't be accurate. Okay, we're going to do the same thing now for item cost. So once again, the column that is associated with item cost that contains totals is total cost. So here we're going to use our total cost divided by our total number sold. So we get a weighted average item cost of $12.12. Next is item contribution margin. Once we have the 2 totals that can be used to calculate another weighted average, we can actually just calculate it using those values. So if we take the weighted average selling price and we subtract from that the weighted average item cost, that will give us a weighted average item contribution margin. And for our food cost, if you recall, we calculated the food cost by taking the item cost and dividing it by the selling price. So once again, since we already have both of those values in weighted averages, we can do the same calculation. So we're going to take the weighted average item cost of $12.12 and divide it by the weighted average selling price of $38.36. And that gives us $31 or 31.59%. So these now become the basis for classifying items by their popularity and their contribution margin and their food cost. Okay, so popularity, we're going to use this 703 here. This is the average number of items sold. It didn't need to be a weighted average. It's just a simple average. Okay, so if an item exceeds 703, then we are going to classify it as popular. So let's go ahead and use an if function to classify that for us. So equals if this value here is greater than, so if the 957 is greater than the 703 down at the bottom, then we want it to say popular. Okay, and so we just put popular in quotation marks. Then the second parameter would be unpopular. Okay, now none of the items are precisely 703. If they were, then it would have to be classified as popular or unpopular. So that's just something to bear in mind. I don't know that it really matters in this case, but we went ahead and said that if it does exceed the 703, it will be popular. Everything else will be unpopular. Okay. The one thing I missed here is we want to put a $sign in front of the 117 so that as we pull this down, it will stay on row 117. So there we go. We've classified each item based on its popularity. Now let's do contribution margin classification. So equals if the item contribution margin, okay, which is right here, if this item contribution margin is greater than the 2624 that we have down at the bottom, then we're going to have it put in, so I'm putting in a comma here to evaluate the true scenario, high CM, and if that's false, then we want to put low CM. Okay. Once again, we're going to want to put a $sign in front of the 118. So now as we pull this down, it will go ahead and classify all those for us. Last off, we have food cost. So equals if the food cost of $26.97 is greater than the weighted average of $31.59, comma, quotation mark, we're going to have it return high, FC, and let's put a percentage sign after it. And if that's false, then it must be low FC percent. Okay, and once again, I have quotation marks around each of those statements. Okay, we need to come back in here and put a $sign in front of the 118 so we can drag this down. All right, and there we have each of our food cost classifications. So now that we have each of these, we can now put them in the appropriate boxes using our matrix analysis that we learned about in the reading. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit here so that we can see it all on one screen. Let's see, that was a lot. Let's see if we can adjust the zoom here. Okay, looks like it can't. Hopefully you can see that. So here we're going to classify items with low popularity and high popularity, and then high food cost and low food cost. So for these to be classified correctly in the homework, you need to classify them in order as they appear here in the page. So we're going to do the same thing here. Okay, so we're just going to go down from the top and just go in order. So here we have pan-seared top sirloin. It's popular and it has low food cost. So we say high popularity, it's popular, and it has low food cost. Okay, so it's going to go in this kind of bottom right quadrant, and I'm just going to put an equal sign and then go click on this value. Okay, next one is dry aged New York. That has high food cost and it's popular. So high food cost and popular would go right here. Okay, next is slow braised short rib, beef short rib. So it's high food cost and popular, so it's going to go right under the dry aged New York. Next is pan-seared lamb loin, and it's high food cost and unpopular, so that's going to go over here. Then we have seared organic chicken breast, low food cost, popular. Okay, so we go low food cost right here, right, and popular. Okay, and that's going to be our seared organic chicken. Okay, Moroccan spices, dusted duck breast. So that's high food cost and unpopular. So high food cost and unpopular. Okay, and our Berkshire pork tenderloin, low food cost and popular. So low food cost, popular. Organic king salmon, low food cost and popular. Pan-seared Alaskan halibut, okay, high food cost and popular. Seared Utah tuna, that's low food cost and unpopular. Seared red snapper, that's high food cost and unpopular. Okay, so high food cost, unpopular. Wood grilled groper, so that's high food cost and popular. And next is the golden potato gnocchi, low food cost, unpopular. And then creamy vegetable risotto, low food cost, unpopular. And then tofu parmesan, low food cost, unpopular. Okay, so everything's been classified. Let's talk about how you would use this information in the real world. So items with low popularity and high food cost would be some of the items that you would consider eliminating. Okay, people don't particularly like them and they cost you a lot of money. So let's look at the items that are in this category. We have pan-seared lamb loin, Moroccan spices dusted duck breast, and seared red snapper. So the duck breast and the lamb loin are pretty unique items on your menu. It might be that you need the lamb to satisfy people with certain dietary restrictions, so you might want to keep that on your menu. The duck is a pretty unique thing, but how popular is it? Well, only 328 people have consumed it in the last year. It's really pretty low popularity, so that's an item you might consider eliminating. We've got the red snapper. It's unpopular, but it's pretty close to average. So this analysis that we're performing can sometimes be a bit oversimplified because this actually comes out to pretty close to average. So you do have some other fish dishes, 3 other fish dishes in fact, so you might consider eliminating this one since it is a pretty costly item. Okay, items with low food cost that are unpopular, these items we would generally like to sell more of. For some reason they're unpopular. If you look, here 3 out of the 4 items are vegetarian items. So we can't just go through and eliminate all of our vegetarian items because likely these are being added just to appease people that are vegetarian. So we probably have to leave at least 2 of those on our menu. Maybe we could consider getting rid of one of them if it makes sense. And then we have this seared Utah tuna. Maybe that's a local item and we want to keep it for whatever reason. And that is an item we could also look at eliminating. If we had to choose one of the fish, though, to eliminate, probably would make more sense to eliminate the red snapper since it is a higher cost item. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing here, but instead of basing it off of food cost percent, we're going to base it off of contribution margin, which is here. Okay, now in the homework, I don't require you to complete these classifications, but you totally can. There's space over to the side, so if you find it easier to classify them all as I've done here, and then complete these steps, then you can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, you can just kind of keep a mental image of whether these items are high or low food cost or high or low contribution margin just based on these values here. Okay, so for contribution margin matrix, we're going to start back up at the top again. So we have pan-seared top sirloin choice, and that is a popular item with a high contribution margin. So highly popular, high contribution margin. It's going to go here. Then we've got our dry aged New York steak, popular, okay, low contribution margin. So that's going to go here. Slow braised short rib, high contribution margin, popular. It's going here. Pan seared lamb loin, high contribution margin, unpopular. Seared organic chicken breast, popular, low contribution margin. Let's see, we just did the seared organic chicken. There we go. Popular, low contribution margin. Okay, Moroccan spices dusted duck breast. So low contribution margin, unpopular. Berkshire pork tenderloin, low contribution margin, popular. Organic king salmon, high contribution margin, popular. Pan-seared Alaskan halibut, okay, high contribution margin, popular. Seared Utah trout, high contribution margin, unpopular. Seared red snapper, high contribution margin, unpopular. Wood grilled groper, low contribution margin, popular. All right, and then we've got all of our vegetarian items, which are going to be low contribution margin, low popularity. So once again, when you're doing this in the homework, just make sure they appear in the order as they appear in the assignment. Normally that would not really matter that much, but the only way I have to evaluate whether or not you did it correctly is for you to list them in order. All right, that's it for our example for the practical problems. The other thing I wanted to go over in this assignment is the menu engineering simulation that you will complete. So when you open the file, this will appear as I'm viewing it right here. Okay, you'll have $3 set as the menu price. You'll have this column over here where you can choose to promote or eliminate items, and then you'll have this area where you can decide what ground meat choice you would like. Okay, so these are all the parameters that you have. The lesson or the assignment introduction goes into details about each of these items and provides you a background on what's going on here with Stacy's Sodas and Sliders. There's also other tabs that provide you valuable information. So if we come over here to the second tab, for instance, we can see the standard costs of all of the different items, all the different menu items, and that includes a description of all their ingredients and the standard costing performed for all their ingredients. Also, here is your forecast. This is your current menu item forecast based on nothing changing, right? So if you were to just leave everything exactly how it is, these are the unit sales that you would expect for the upcoming period. So the purpose of this activity is to engage in menu engineering and to come up with recommended changes that you think will increase the contribution margin or the gross margin of Stacy's Sodas and Sliders. Okay, so what we're trying to maximize is right here, this line, gross margin. Okay, not gross margin percent. We're not trying to maximize revenue. We're trying to maximize the gross margin. This is what is left over after we pay for all of our food costs. Okay, so you can imagine some of the effects on different changes. So for instance, if I just change the pricing of the blue bacon burger up to $5, okay, well, it's quite likely that people that come to the restaurant or to the food truck will choose some of these other items to purchase instead of the blue bacon. So if you just move up the pricing on all of your items, what's going to happen then is people are going to perceive your food truck as expensive, and they'll just kind of stop coming to it. Okay, if you promote items, then people will come and they'll see the promotion on the side of the truck, and that will affect their purchasing behavior. So you have to kind of assume that it won't necessarily increase spending generally by promoting an item, but it will shift purchasing decisions from one item to another. Okay, so if I choose to promote the California, for instance, and I come in here and I put a P, okay, and I choose to promote the pastrami, okay, it's quite likely that people will purchase fewer of these other items and instead purchase more of the items that I promoted on the side of my truck. Okay, the truck itself is really only promoting to the people that are already there making the purchase. So it's not like print ads or like media ads that can get us additional business. It's just affecting how consumers spend their money when they're placing their order. Okay, you can at your discretion choose to eliminate items. You would choose to do this if unit sales are particularly low for an item or if it's particularly expensive. Keep in mind though that as you eliminate items off of your menu, you won't have the sales from those items. Now, some of those sales will likely shift over to other items on your menu, but if you eliminate certain items, then it might be that you just lose a customer by eliminating that item. Okay, so if there are items that are particularly unique, then they might be all that is really bringing in customers into your food truck. And so by eliminating that item, you might be eliminating a portion of your sales. Okay, so if you do want to eliminate an item though, you can put in an E here in order to eliminate the item. Okay, so we're going to choose to promote some items, and at your discretion you could eliminate items as well. The last decision you can make is whether or not to keep the current organic 85-15 beef, that's 85% meat, 15% fat, or to switch on over to this 80-20 chuck, which is 80% meat, 20% fat, and just chuck meat. It's not guaranteed to be organic or grass-fed or anything like that. Okay, that comes with a substantial savings, but it is estimated to have an impact on sales. Okay, now with all the resources that you're providing, including the market study that's been done regarding the change in beef, you can make some really good, educated guesses on the impact that it'll have on your sales. The goal of this activity, once again, is to maximize the gross margin. The gross margin is the amount that is left over after expenses are paid. So maybe by switching the beef, you lose some sales, but you're able to drop the cost of sales significantly, and that's worth it. You're just going to have to look into the math and look into the projections and figure out what the best course of action is. Okay, so to actually complete the simulation, you are going to fill it all out, get ready to run your first attempt. So maybe I decide to promote these items, and I decide to eliminate the little porky, and I come in here and I change some prices. Okay, and now I'm ready to run the simulation. Okay, after you've made these changes, you'll just come in here and hit run simulation, and it will then provide you your results from your first attempt. Okay, at that point you can then change other things and then run the simulation again. As you're going through all this process though, make sure you are paying attention to the write-up and following that process through the write-up, and providing your insights into what is going on in your decision-making process, what resources you're using from the lesson, and all that. I hope this has been helpful. Have a wonderful day.